there's a lot of myth mixed in with science, and the way those two interface makes it very, very different from reading, say, something by Newton. But to answer your question more directly, I'm not sure exactly who or what process determined these things, the relationships. Just a function of time and tradition. Is that a question? Oh, sure. You know, I don't think you're going to be able to see the Milky Way around here. We have too many lights, unfortunately, too much light pollution, and it's kind of cloudy.
Yeah, tonight's not a good night, but we can sure see it from here.
We can.
On real clear nights. There is some light pollution in the area that makes it a little bit difficult, but yeah, on good nights we can sure see it from here.
If you go out into more countryish areas, you can really see it, like into upstate New York, or I'm sure there are areas of Connecticut without towns. But yeah, the darker the sky, the better. Sure.
I think I read that most of the first magnitude stars are visible in the northern hemisphere. So, a lot of the constellations are, include those. And I guess, are there, in the southern hemisphere, are there less, is it more, with less bright stars? Is that true? And is it harder to see constellations? Or? I guess it would be weird because so used to seeing, the Big Dipper and, certain givens and stuff. But are there less bright stars and just a lot of...
I wouldn't, that didn't come up in my research, but I wouldn't imagine that there's a reason for it to be distributed that way. Do you know?
I think it's pretty much the same. I mean, Sirius, the brightest, we can see from here, but it's a southern, it's got a southern declination.
Just to illustrate a little bit better, we can see stars with a southern declination from here. But the more extreme, say if something had a declination of -60, we wouldn't be able to see it under any circumstances. But I'm really not sure. I suppose it could be just a random happening that there are more first magnitude stars. Mm-hmm.
Sure go look in the books in there.
We can absolutely check that.
And figure it out, but most of the brightest are really bright.
Canopus.
The brightest in there in the southern skies. The fourth brightest is Arcturus, it's north. Fifth is Vega, it's north. So I would imagine it's pretty equal. If you go look it up, I mean,
we'd be happy to check that.
But we can go look in the book.
Sure.
Patty, I know we have Polaris as a north pole marker, but they don't have any stars at the south pole. Right?
There's not a star that is directly aligned with the North Celestial Pole. What they would do was they would use the Southern Cross as a partial marker. Let me see if I can pull that up better. As you can see, that points pretty nearly to the South Celestial Pole, but doesn't quite do it. They would also use, in the northern latitudes more so, they would use Canopus as a rough approximation of the South Celestial Pole. And then we invented, well, then the magnetic compass became more widely available, and this whole star became obsolete, unfortunately.
Scott?
Yeah.
I read in Machu Picchu that the Milky Way has a shadow. Did you find shadowing at night with Magellan?
I did notice that there was some shadowing at night. I wasn't certain if it was the Milky Way or just all the stars in general, but yeah, absolutely. It wasn't a bright one, but a little bit of a shadow. I'd forgotten about that. Thank you.
Elaine, an astronomer told me that. Bill Herbst was, for years, the director of the Van Black Observatory here at Wesleyan in Middletown. And he told me on one of his trips down there to some of the big observatories in the Andes that you could definitely see your shadow just from the southern Milky Way. So the Milky Way down there is a good deal brighter than our Milky Way.
Anyone else? Sure.
Scotty, did the Aboriginal people have a calendar like the Mayans and all that? Did they develop that type of
Did the Aboriginal people have a calendar?
based on their astronomical dreams?
Unfortunately, it's very difficult to tell. We found, here, let me see if I can pull it up. The carvings that I pointed out very briefly, it's suspected that that has to do with lunar cycles and was used to keep track of time, but we can't figure out exactly how it works. There is also, I couldn't find much information on it, but there's a site they call the Aboriginal Stonehenge, which could also have been used to mark time. It's very logical to assume that they would have a means of time, but I don't know to what extent that went, or if that was anything more than oral tradition.
Is there much difference between the seasons? Did you notice?
I arrived in the second to last week of winter, and I stayed until the second week of summer. And on the East Coast, there was a marked change between the various seasons. In the northern area, it's mostly marked by periods of extended drought, flooding, fire, and other things we wouldn't ordinarily associate with seasons.
So in the north, is there not a planting season?
It's northern Australia, specifically the area around Darwin, was never meant to be kind of cultivated. It's largely wilderness, even to this day. It's impossible to generalize with Australia. It's as large as the United States. Does Texas have 4 seasons?
Buffalo only has 2, the 4th of July and winter.
That's true. That's true.
Is it just, I served in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and we had 2 seasons, dry and wet.
Yeah.
Is that northern Australia because it is tropical?
Mm-hmm. It's closer to that.
6 months dry, 6 months rain?
There's a huge waterfall. It's called Jim Jim Falls, and for about 6 months, it's a massive, massive waterfall. You can't be within a kilometer of it on the river without getting thrown on rocks. But when I visited, I was actually able to climb up it because there was no water at all. So it does alternate between extremely arid and extremely wet. Wish I brought some more photos. Wish I could have found them. That's next year. Oh yeah, I'd love to.